Hi, my name is Jeff Zappelli. I'm the general manager for Walt Wines, and you've reached our weekly happy hours for Walt Wines, Hall Wines, and Bach Wines. Thank you for joining us today. We have an incredible guest. Her name is Charissa Thompson, and I can't wait to get together with Charissa, talk all things football, podcasts, what's going on in the world. It's going to be really, really exciting. So this is a lot of fun for us. But before I get started, I just wanted to say that, it's been an incredible long year, and it's really exciting now that California is 100% open. Our tasting rooms are busier than ever. We're one of the safest places, according to Forbes, to actually come in and visit. So we hope that you will book your trip and that you can go to waltwines.com and book a tasting at our Sonoma, Healdsburg, or Napa tasting rooms. But as I mentioned, today I have a very talented person coming on to talk about wine and football with me. She's one of the favorite people that I have on, that I get to at least hang out with on TV. Her name's Charissa Thompson. She's the host of Fox NFL Kickoff. She's also the co-host of the podcast. She's the founder of House and Home Design, and more importantly, she's a UCSB gaucho. Thank you, Charissa. That was great timing.
Well, you made that wonderful introduction. I started looking around. I mean, who are we talking about? Thank you, Jeff. That's so kind of you. Thank you for having me. Wine and football and house things. Oh my! I'm already starting.
Absolutely. Well, we didn't practice this sometimes in the pre-show we'll practice this. We didn't have a chance to, but
no, Jeff, I do live television. Look at that. See, this is what happens when you don't do Instagram lives and you have like a total, by the way, I haven't even been drinking enough to have that fall. This is what happens when you don't have a professional setup, that it has to be held up because the phone's going to die. Shocker for me.
Okay.
But anyways,
well, I know that you're in New York you're on assignment in New York, and I have a bottle of the Walt Pinot Noir, and I'm just going to pass this down through the world of Instagram. There it is.
Yeah, look at that. No, I was going to say before my phone, I have to take it off the charger. I'll just have to charge it when I need it.
That's okay.
We don't practice. I do live television. Like anything goes until it gets fired. So careful what you say. I'm kidding.
That's all right. Well, you're on a safe spot today. You're with Walt Wines. Cheers to you.
Cheers to Walt Wines and to you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. So outside being an alumni of UCSB, which is where I went to school, you have one of the coolest shows to watch on television before football. I'm a big football fan. But how did you get interested in football, and how do you prepare for those things each week?
Well, it was my stellar UCSB education, of course. I actually, when my mom was like, wait, why are you, I'm born and raised in Seattle, as you are as well.
Yes.
By the way, we should let the viewers in on the fact that we have a lot in common. We grew up in the same town in Seattle, outside of Seattle, Bothell, and same college. I mean, next you're going to tell me you were born May 4th, but we'll get to that.
Nope. No. I actually don't have anyone on May 4th. My sister was born on May 4th. Actually, she wasn't born on May 4th. It's May 3rd, but close enough.
Close enough. No, yeah. I mean, my mom probably got it wrong. Probably is May 3rd. At this point, it's too late. Can't go back on it. But yeah, so I grew up in Seattle and grew up a sports fan, whatever. But when I graduated high school, my mom said to me, she was like, where do you want to go to school? And I was like, I want to go to school in Santa Barbara. And she's like, why? And I go, I'm going to have you say that again slower, Mom.
Yeah.
Why do I want to go to school in Santa Barbara? And she's like, well, do they have a broadcasting program? Because I've always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And I go, no. I go, but that doesn't matter. Just get a degree in something. And then I ended up doing, a bunch of internships to learn the trade of broadcasting. But I was like, Mom, say no more. And so then the first time she visited me was actually my graduation.
That was me too. The first time they came down, even though, it's a beautiful university on the beach. There's plenty of fun things to do. No, graduation.
That's what I was like, when she finally got down there, I was like, that's on you, Kathy. You should have been here 4 years ago. She's like, I would have never left. I would have enrolled in school here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I loved the idea of going to school in Santa Barbara, but the broadcasting thing, I've always wanted to be a sports broadcaster from the time I was a really young girl. I would interview my brother like he was Jay Buhner.
Oh, get out.
yeah, I took a paper towel roll and a tennis ball and I made a microphone, and he was a couple years older than I was. And so I think when I did that, I was like 11,
Uh-huh.
and he was too cool. You know, he's like 13. He's like, I'm not
For
doing it.
sure.
And then he watched, like, I was taping this broadcast with my friend, like this like fake broadcast. We'd like make like little cutout cards of like car crash and like pull it down from the ceiling for the
Yeah.
graphic box.
Yeah.
Like recorded. So I was like, Tyson, please, like, just be Jay Buhner. It's like, oh, whatever. And so I ended up.
Jay Buhner, you're talking about the Mariner, the Seattle Mariner, Jay Buhner?
Or another one that I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
No, that team was unbelievable.
Yes, it was.
A-Rod,
Yeah.
Martinez.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, we had freaking Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he finally succumbed to my request, and I used that on my resume reel to try to get a job shamelessly to prove to the news director in Denver that I really have always wanted to do this. But
Yeah.
well, lucky, yeah, I took a job in the human resources department at first because, well, I should never be in a human resources department, but
That's a tough gig for sure.
I lied to get the job, and then I felt so bad that I lied in the interview that I had to call the guy, and I was like, I just lied. I don't really want to work in HR. And he goes, fine, you got the job because you're honest. That's what HR is all about. That's what he told me.
Oh my God.
That's why I got the job. Yeah.
Wow.
So then
like one foot out the door.
Yeah, well, I was before it even started. I was like, look, I don't want to be here. Who wants to be in HR? All due respect to HR representative. Cheers.
Cheers to that. So cheers to you. Yeah, and so just wanted to remind everybody who's on, if there's any questions that you have for Charissa, for me, feel free to add them to the chat or add them. We're drinking the Waltz 2018 Clos Pepe Pinot Noir from the Santa Barbara area. That's why we selected it for you today, because we make wine from Oregon all the way to Santa Barbara, and I had to bring a little home to you. So that's what I was trying to do.
Well, that's first of all, very thoughtful, and this is. And as somebody who only dreams of becoming a sommelier, am I saying sommelier right? I mean,
sommelier, yes.
Sommelier.
Yes.
Well, I should.
You can say som. They're fine with that.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
My other dream job. So as someone that knows far more than I do about wine, I just consume enough to think I know some.
Yeah.
What is special about this? You know, everyone talks about the year or the,
yes.
What is special about the 2018 year?
So actually, it was one of the better years in the last probably 5 that we've had as far as a wine grower. So all the wines this is a specific place near the town of Santa Barbara, about an hour north. And it's not known, as you're aware, it's not known for an area that has a lot of rain. So you end up with a lot of, just not a lot of water in the soil. So it tends to lean more towards, people know us more for Syrahs in this area, for Cabernet from the Happy Canyon. This is actually a vineyard that's way out west near the town of Lompoc, where they shoot the rockets off for at the Air Force Base.
Uh-huh.
And it sits in soils that are really sandy. So because it's close to the beach, the soils tend to be more like the beach. And it has diatomaceous earth, which is I just probably went by everybody, but it's basically a soil type.
Those pictures, because I went over, but I just kept nodding. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's okay. And so
you want to learn, what does that mean?
Diatomaceous earth?
Yeah.
It's the it's the skeletal remains of microorganisms. It's the sediment at the bottom of the ocean that, as everything settles, it falls to the bottom, and then it gets pushed up by different volcanic activity. And so this area is very much that area. And so you end up with the same sediment that's on the ocean floor on the topsoil.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could talk about this all day. Luckily, we are. Okay.
We can. This is what we're here to do. Just talk about you and talk about wine.
Who cares about me? That's boring. But this is fascinating. Okay. So what is the difference between a Pinot Noir, a Cab, and so on and so forth? I mean, I know there's a lot of variations, but like just broad strokes, what would be the difference?
I would say the easiest thing is the intensity of the tannin. If I could.
Intensity of the tannin. Okay. Those are
yes.
the bold marks that come down the glass.
So those are the legs.
The legs
tend to have a lot to do with the amount of sugar or alcohol that's in the wine. That's what drives the legs. So the more
alcohol there is.
Sometimes, yeah, or it just could be the concentration of it. It's got a lot of either sugar concentrated, not so much in really fine wines, or just the amount of alcohol can actually also keep the wine sticking to the top of the glass.
I just do this and I have no idea why I'm doing it.
Well, because it's what we do. With the pinky,
I am a stemless wine drinker, as knowing me, as evidenced by
Mm-hmm.
falling off the deck here.
Yeah.
I'll break the glass, but it does look better when there's a stem. I'll give you that.
Is that a Riedel Overture? Is it a crystal glass?
Barrel, how dare you? Again, I'm not to be trusted with fine things. The only thing I'm to be trusted with is a fine wine.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we the tannins are that drier part of the wine. So when you're drinking Cabernet, it'll kind of come in and it'll just immediately start to have this astringency or this slight bitterness in the recesses of the kind of your palate. And that's tannin. It's that puckering flavor where you're like, wow, this just dried my entire mouth out. That's tannin.
Wow.
So Pinot is lighter, tends to be
Pinot
less tannic, and Cabernet is big.
Okay. Now, my unsophisticated self, almost being 40, I felt like I drank Pinot Noirs earlier in my days, and I have gradually gone to a bigger and bolder wine.
Mm-hmm.
Is that typical, or is that just my own path?
So that's definitely my experience. When I was in Santa Barbara, I went to Blue Agave, if you remember that restaurant in downtown Santa Barbara.
Well, just
that was
down memory lane here.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it's hard.
No.
Hard not to. It's Santa Barbara. Anyway, so I had my first wine that really turned my head was the Foxen Buenecido Pinot Noir. I was new to wine, didn't know a lot about it, but I enjoyed learning about it. And so from there, I learned more about Cabernet, and then I just dove in and got to know any wine. Anything that finds my glass, I'll try it.
Wow. Aren't you always surprised? Again, you have a sophisticated palate, but aren't you surprised if you're doing, blind tests of something that, the price point isn't that much, and all of a sudden, you're putting it up against something that's very expensive. I think that is probably one of the number one things I love about wine, that sometimes you don't know, which because so many times when you're just judging a book from the outside or the label, or not even the label, the price tag, you're like, oh, it must be good. So I like to be surprised when it's not. Like, that's how I feel like with home design. I'm like, I find something at Home Goods and I'm like, oh my God, this is only $10. I'm losing money if I don't buy it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, when you find that's what I love about the little the social media Twitter page, like groups that I follow around. They'll be like, oh my God, I just found this wine and it's like $10. And you're like, well, I'm just gonna go online and I'm gonna buy a whole case of that from wherever I can find it and have it shipped to me, because even if I have to pay the shipping costs at $10, who cares? Right?
You'll have to fill me in, of course, other than following Walt Wines. What other people I need to follow for tips like that? Because someone turned me on to, whenever I try wine, and I love it, the app where you can take the picture of the label.
Yeah.
I'm so into that.
Vivino is great. That's a good source.
Yeah, so if like in that moment, I'm like shipping it to my house. That's like, it's like on my door before I get home from dinner. Like, oh.
Well, thank you for embracing shipping, because most of the wine, the reason why not a lot of people know what Walt wines are is most of our wines are actually sold directly from the winery. We're not in a lot of stores. You can find it in New York when you're there, but the easiest way to find our wines is always online. You are doing what journalists do to me on these. You are starting to ask me questions, and I'm going to turn this around right now.
I know me about me. I'm going to ask you. Okay.
There's a number of people who have been commenting. They're like, see her turning this into her interview? And I was like, yep, this is what's happening again.
Your stuff is far more fascinating right now than mine. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm really fascinated. So I watch a number of the shows, and just like wine was made by men historically, right? All the wines that are made by Walt are actually made by Allison and Megan. So you're in a male dominated field right now, and what I always appreciate is you're far more prepared than any of the other guys that are sitting at the table, and they're just sitting there because they played the game. Like Tony Gonzalez, great tight end, right? Played the game. But you actually have to go through the work of wanting to be a journalist your whole life. They wanted to be a football player their whole life. So what's it like living in that world, and have you become so successful at it?
Oh, well, I appreciate the endorsement. I will never be a Hall of Fame tight end. So closest I can come to the game of football and covering football is behind a desk. And I always equate my position to being the quarterback, and my job to distribute the ball or distribute the time of the hour allotment show that we have, and put them in a position to succeed, right? Tony can't be a if a quarterback doesn't get him the ball. And so I think that it's really important to recognize that I'm in a unique position, yes, as a female, but I actually did an interview. My girlfriend, Erin Andrews, and I have a podcast, and it's called Calm Down. And we interviewed Lori Locust, who's the assistant defensive line coach for the Super Bowl winning Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Right.
So just that introduction says a lot, right?
Right.
Female on the defensive line. Like, we are talking men here. We're talking 300 pounds, 6'5". These are men. And she's a female. Bruce Arians has, put together that staff that he was very adamant that she's not getting the job because she's a woman and we're supposed to fill some quota, because you're not. There's no rules that say you need to hire a woman. But he said we hired her because she was the best for the position. So in speaking to her, Erin and I really felt proud that are maybe in the small sorority of women that are afforded the opportunity to sit at that desk with guys that have been the best to ever do it. Right. That said, I always say, like, being a woman in sports, maybe the door opened because I was a woman, because there are less of us, but the door got a lot quicker if you don't know what you're doing. Whereas there's a bigger area in which you can mess up if you're a man, because someone he forgot. If you don't say the name right or you mispronounce a player's name, it's because you don't know the game if you're a woman. So I feel very fortunate that I've been in this business 13, going on 14 years. I never take that for granted, which is probably why I continue to have 5 jobs outside of football.
Yes, you do.
It is very similar to athletics and being an athlete, that there is a shelf life, and I think that I'm very aware that when the day comes that my, brass, that the suits knock on my, tap me on the shoulder and say, it's been a good run, kid, but you're out. I understand that is part of it. So in the meantime, while I am afforded the opportunity to sit at the desk, I try to make the most of it. And come on, it's sports. And it's not that serious. And I think that, as we've seen this past year, how much sports is important to the DNA of our, the Americana that is, and the fact that the NFL made such a point and really learned from the other leagues and had that opportunity, given that COVID started, quarantine started in March, baseball and the other sports didn't have the luxury of being like, how are we going to figure this out? Whereas the NFL, which to me is just, the cream of the crop, to figure out, all right, we're going to do all these things and we're starting week 1. We're not going to have this be an excuse. So anyways, I think that I'm even more appreciative of my profession when I know how quickly it can be gone, but also how external situations can take away sports altogether. And then we're left being like, God, what's our identity? I mean, we looked at these national, after 9/11, watching football and bringing us back together in September and being able, there's, any time that there's chaos in the world, feel like people turn to sports to feel normal. And so I feel very lucky to have the job that I do.
And just so you know, there are these things called Hall of Fame broadcasters. You can be in this job for a while. I think you're going to be pretty successful. So.
Well, it's fun. I mean, I definitely I have to say that I will you tell me it's time to go, I'll be like, it was a good run, kid, because that was fun. It was really able to, I know Terry doesn't like when I say this, Bradshaw. We both got COVID this year. We were the only 2 people on the set that got it because we're attached to his hips. Like, he's like my favorite human on the planet. He's like the other father that I'm obsessed with, but like, he's my other father. And so I'll never forget. I was supposed to fly back for an Aaron Jones interview, and I'm not feeling so good. I was in New York, and I was like, I'm not feeling so good. I was like, nope, you're not getting on that plane without knowing. I took a COVID test, comes back positive. I'm like, God, I immediately call him and I'm like, we got bad news, Pops. I was like, I just took this COVID test and you and I are always together on Sunday. So you need to take a test. And it was the night of a Thursday night football game. So he was already on his way to the studio to do
Yeah.
He calls me back. He goes, I have it too. And I was like, no, you cannot die because we got COVID. I was like, and people will be like, the Steelers in the 70s could have, the defenses in the 70s
couldn't get you.
COVID and Charissa. Yeah. And he's so, he's like, one of the many reasons we love Terry is because he's like so self-deprecating and funny. He's like, I promise you, kid, I won't die because of this. So
yeah, no, he's just so great. He's so easy to talk to it looks like. I mean, I've never met the guy, but
if he jumped on here, he'd be like, hello, Jeff, it's great to know.
Does Terry drink wine?
Oh, Terry, yeah, loves wine. He's got a bourbon.
Okay.
Lead with that because he's the ultimate marketer. But he loves wine. He loves bourbon. He's always a good time, regardless of an alcohol. But even more fun with one.
So why don't more NFL players drink wine? Why am I having a tougher time finding NFL players than like baseball or soccer even?
Hard enough. I think that there's definitely
okay.
I did an interview with Devontae Adams from the Packers. If anyone doesn't know football, he is the best receiver in the league right now. If Aaron doesn't come back to Green Bay, that interview will be thrown out the window because the entire conversation was amazing. Aaron Rodgers and him, their connection is. But
for sure,
he just went on a wine trip with a bunch of guys, and it's definitely a thing. We announced that Charles Woodson will be joining us now on Sundays as part of
He makes wine.
He
know where he started making wine?
Yeah.
I bet you don't.
Well, and the NBA contingency, LeBron and Dwayne Wade and all those guys are huge wine fans. So it's definitely not a trend, but I think
so. When you see Charles makes a wine called 24.
Okay.
And that wine was made first at Hall Wines, which is where Walt Hall and Baca, those are the family of wines. So he came in 2006, and that's where I met him. And he was just thinking about, he was like a rookie, I think. And he was just thinking about getting into wine. His friend Rick Ruiz, Rick Ruiz, who's our cellar master. And I remember the day he came into our tasting room, I was like, oh my God, there's Charles Woodson.
Charles Woodson, yeah.
And now he has like a wine company. Like he and Rick started a whole thing. So, and he makes some really good Cabernet. So big, puckering, concentrated.
Well, I can't wait for him to bring a welcome gift back to us at Fox then. And I'll be sure to say, I know where you got your start, Charles. Just sit down and I'm going to tell you how this thing went because you can't just take all the credit.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's definitely, he's talented in his own right now, but you can say it all started at Hall Wines for sure.
As all things do. I mean, crazy.
So I wanted to play a game with you, if that's all right. So you have a podcast, which is incredible, with Aaron Andrews. You mentioned it. It's called Calm Down. You can find that podcast on iHeartRadio.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's distributed by iHeart, but you can find it anywhere where podcasts are streamed, whether it's iTunes, Spotify.
Whoever made that, by the way, that lineup, that's like what you hear everywhere. You can find it anywhere you find your podcasts.
Yeah, I know, right? When we read it, I'm like, so that makes sense. You just find it wherever you find podcasts. Okay? It's
like the internet.
Wherever you find TV shows. Got it.
So on that, you and Aaron, I think it was like the third, because you just started this podcast. And on your third episode, you played a game called, the name of the podcast was Aaron the Tattletale and Charissa Gets in Trouble.
So you were the one that listened. Thank you.
I did. Of course I've listened. It's a great podcast. Everyone who's here right now should listen to that.
Thank you.
I wanted to play that game with you. We call it Sip or Spill because, it's wine. So yes, that's the first step to any good game is making sure that you're ready, right? Preparation.
Water. I'm doing
Okay.
In New York, and it is so hot. I'm also wearing a sweater. All right.
I feel you. California is in the same position right now. Okay. So in this game, you can either tell me what the story is, or you can spill, or you can sip. And then I won't ask you that question again.
Okay. We're going to ask something. I either spill the beans or spill the wine in this case, or I take a sip.
Take a sip, and then we don't answer.
I got it. Okay. I'm ready.
All right.
So I promise you, we'll
There's
keep
a lot
this.
I want. There's a lot I talk about. I mean, I might be dehydrated because I'm only talking. All right.
That's okay. You can feel free to ask me questions. All right. So you're the anchor of Fox NFL Kickoff. Which host is most prepared for the show
Peter Schrager,
and least prepared?
Colin Cowherd. No, I'm kidding. Colin Cowherd is prepared because he hosts a radio and TV show every day. So I'm actually really going to miss Colin this year because he's not going to be on the show anymore because he works 5 days a week and, needs a break. But it was really awesome to be able to, defer to him on things because he's talked about them all week. And also Colin's a contrarian. So all guys were like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is the best. He's like, yeah, Rodgers sucks. And we'll be like, yeah. So it's kind of, you always want one of those people in a show that's willing to do the point counterpoint. So I'm saying lovingly that he's not prepared, but it's because he doesn't have to be. He's so prepared all week long.
He just gets it. Yeah, he gets the easy bite.
Well, he's half the show. I'm like, hey, I'm talking to you. He goes, oh, sorry, back. Why? Because he's tired, working so much. This guy.
Yeah, for sure. And just so you know, in the battle of California quarterbacks, it's Brady over Rodgers.
Hold on, I'm distracted because E Junior 22 said Taco Time rated 1 to 10. Are you out of your mind? It's a 10. I need those freaking Mexi fries right now. 22 left field. Oh my God.
Taco Time. I mean, no one knows what Taco Time is unless you live in Washington.
Does E Junior 22, and that is a 10 out of 10. Every time is Taco Time for anyone that is from the Pacific Northwest. I don't even know if they expand to Oregon, but they should.
Yes.
This is
I would take Taco Time right now if we could like I don't know, Grubhub that'd be great.
Would take Taco Time literally anytime, but also it's that thing when everyone's like, when I moved to California, I don't know if people were like this with you, like, oh, you have to try In-N-Out, and I'm like, okay, I didn't think In-N-Out was incredible. I'm like, Taco Time is what the world needs. Okay.
Taco Time. I 100%. Thank you for bringing that memory back because that's awesome. So which of your co-hosts was the best football player in their career?
Now, technically, my co-hosts expand to the 12 o'clock hour where it's Terry and Howie and Michael and whatever.
This is true.
And Troy, if we want to go even into other co-hosts that are in the booth. And
yeah.
I don't want to say that because I think here, then I'll just do it.
There you go.
Because they're all incredible in their own right. And when you even if you don't get a Hall of Fame jacket, the idea of playing, you're the best of the best. And as my dad always referred to it, that pyramid, you're the 1% that made it. So
yeah, for sure.
Makes you a very impressive individual.
Yes, I totally agree. And I'll let you sip out of that question, I guess. What is the best, what is your most embarrassing or on-air moment?
Okay, I don't know what age group on Alt Lines. Hopefully over 21, but if you're
it's definitely over 21.
Okay, sure. Then I can say it.
Okay.
I'm working a game, college football game, because I worked. I would work back in my day. I would work 5 days, Monday through Friday, on a show called The Best Damn Sports Show. Then I'd go work a college football game on Saturdays, and then I would get on a plane and I'd go work an NFL game on Sundays. Okay. So my college football assignment was always in the Big Ten. The Big Ten network had just started, and so on my
that was
yeah.
And you covered Big Ten
in Minnesota. In Minnesota, the Golden Gophers. It's an outdoor stadium. Okay, like in Minnesota.
Cold.
In December.
Yeah.
This is the microphone. Tom Brenneman was in the booth. Tom Brenneman and Charles Davis were my play and analysts. They're great. But I went like this. Well, Tom, I don't know who the coach was at the time because yesterday, but I was like, whatever the coach's name was, I was like, well, so-and-so says that he needs to do a better job of watching the play clock. My mouth was frozen because freezing, and I said play.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't say again, obviously, but I needed to sell. I already asked what the audience age was. My mouth was frozen. And then at this point, I'm saying it over and over again because I'm trying to get it correct. So I think it was like 4 times I just said it. Under the mic. All right. Looks like it's going to be a great second half, Charissa. I'm like,
take me straight to the bar.
Yeah. It
Just
wasn't
been fired.
frozen. So I definitely have to say that was my most embarrassing moment inadvertently due to weather.
Uh-huh.
But I think that one of the many reasons I love working at Fox, and I've worked other places, but Fox lets you be you. So even if it's embarrassing somewhere else, it works at Fox. Forget there was a Thursday night football game, and they had like the highest rated, whatever ratings had to date. And so on Sunday, it got brought up on the show about like, oh, the ratings were incredible on Thursday night, this and that, whatever. And Howie Long, who's a man of few words, but when he says them, they're so poignant. He's also super reserved. So when he says something that's a little off color, you're like, whoa, Howie.
Whoa. Oh, yeah.
Howie goes, well, Bradshaw's fly was down the whole time. And so then they cut to me to say something. I go, no wonder the ratings were so high. But like any other network, wouldn't allow them to say that. But then my boss came out to the set after I said, no wonder the ratings were so high. And he's like, great follow-up, Chris. And I was like, this is why I work at Fox.
Yeah.
Work needs to feel like a little bit of a locker room for these guys, which is, I think, reason that many of them stay in this. I mean, when you look at Charles and Shaq on TNT, the magic of that is like feeling like they're back in a locker room or clubhouse or whatever to coincide with their respective sports. So I really like that I am employed by a place that lets you be you,
you do a great job of that, by the way, because you're just as amazing, in an Instagram live with Walt Wines, by the way. So appreciate that.
Enough about me. Let's talk about you. So the talents are the legends. I actually do want I mean, all jokes aside.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the number one question you get asked about wine?
Depends on the venue. I think probably the more famous question for people who are just trying to get into wine is they don't understand. So we're going to typically, this is the 2018 Walt Clos Pepé Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
And wine can be at this expensive level because you're spending so much time picking out that really special bottle. And they're like, so you guys always talk about like the flavors, the aromas. Sometimes we'll use words like leather and pencil lead and things like that, right? And they're like, how do you get all of those things into wine? And our response is always, we're actually not. We're just literally farming the vineyard, and the vineyard, just like a strawberry, tastes like a strawberry. A grape tastes like a grape, but it tastes different depending upon where you're growing it. So the flavors of, so in this case, I get pomegranate, I get a little bit of like a sea breeze salinity to the wine. That's the mid palate. Salinity, it's like a salty flavor. I get a salty flavor in the wine.
Because you have a great vernacular, or is that an actual term you learned because of wine?
That's a term we learned because of wine. And, and Santa Barbara, because, we surfed a lot down there, right?
Well, look, I don't want to talk about my time at Rincon, but we will. Okay, if you want to take it down to Winter, go down the coast. Okay, I was in San Diego as well. I don't know what you want. Well, that's interesting. Well, so if I wanted to become a
Somm, yeah.
PC with you, how long would it take for me to get that certification? Now I know there's varying
like levels.
Yeah.
I would encourage you. So the Guild of Sommeliers is the practice of people who work in restaurants and sell wine. And then there's a whole nother side of the world, which is kind of the more academic study of how to make wine and where wine is made and how wine is made.
Okay.
And so there's 2 certifications that we see a lot. There's Somm, which means that you've studied wine. You're more studying wine once it hits the bottle, right? Like once it gets into the wine, you can identify that these people literally will say, that's a 1979 Margaux. And that was a year when they did blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, wow, your mind is full of a ton of knowledge about wine.
Or savants that are like, oh, it was yesterday I was interviewing Jason Pierre-Paul for an NFL film show that we do interviews in the off season and then they air in season. and he's like recalling plays and different, blue route 42, whatever,
Right.
able to sack Brady in the Super Bowl in 2011. I'm like, I literally cannot remember my address sometimes. When someone zip code, I'm like, is it 90? And their ability to recount something. So I find that,
Yeah, but I would guess that you could remember from the World Cup that you covered what was a really specific
Landon Donovan. Yes, actually, I can recall that. So yes,
right.
I have a propensity to remember, sports and numbers because it's what I do for a living. And I think that my brain works in numbers. And so, this isn't me bragging, don't worry. I have a lot of defects, but I never use notes in an interview. And I'll tell you why, because I want it to feel like a conversation. So I always feel like if I don't know the information and I need to have notes in front of me, then I have it prepared, because very similar to what you and I, right? It's a conversation. That's why it's fun. It's still, but it can be a lot of different things and not feel like an interview. So the minute that I bring papers in athlete, they go, oh, it's an interview. My biggest thing is I want them to be like, oh, have we started? I'm like, no, it's done. Like, we are in a full interview. So it's really important. That's why I do think that maybe one skill that I have is to remember things for not only interviews, but just in like numerical, like a numerical sense, like in terms of yards of like so-and-so rushed for so many yards and so many touchdowns. It's also doubling. So I'm really good with numbers because I'm like, the over under is 6.5. And I'm like so myopic about watching the game because I'm like, money. Yeah. Like anything. I'm very specific. So maybe that's the reason.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's what we try to aspire to on the Walt Wines Happy Hour, is just to have a really nice conversation. You've given us a lot of your time. So I really appreciated you coming on and being a part of it. And more than anything, I would love to carry this conversation on in the tasting room or anywhere where we may find ourselves.
Okay, so promise me this, since now the world is open again. Next time in anywhere you guys want to do a tasting.
Sonoma, Napa, or anywhere in the world that you might be.
Perfect. So then we'll do another live all together, and maybe we can do, you guys can, you can ask about, I'm going to request that my girlfriend Erin and all my other girlfriends that love, or guy friends that love wine as well, we come and we'll do like a back and forth, sports and wine.
I just had Amanda Balionis up last weekend. Would love to have you up too. Bring on Erin.
Charles, you're not invited. You know what I mean?
No, Charles. No, he's already got his thing going.
Charles gets the Heisman to our invitation. You know what I mean? I keep that because if people are watching it, don't know what I mean.
Yes.
That's a problem. Charles Woodson won the Heisman. He did the famous pose. Okay, that's what's going on there. We're all out of time. Thank you guys for joining us. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you in Boston.
Look at you trying to end the conversation.
No, I'm going to let you real quick because my front desk is calling because the guy that I need to sign for here. But my favorite sign in Bothell was this, when it said, "Welcome to Bothell."
Yes.
OT was off and it said, "Welcome to hell for day or a lifetime."
That was living in Bothell. Here's to you, Charissa. Thanks so much. Follow Charissa at Charissa J. Thompson. Follow Walt Wines. And don't forget to check her out at House and Home Design. She's also got a great design company, and you should check that on Instagram too.
Thank you. We'll drink wine and I'll decorate your house and I'll throw in some football stats. Maybe make you some money. See what happens.
Fantastic. Let's do all of that.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it.
Bye.
That was Charissa Thompson. She is the host of Fox's NFL Kickoff. She's found all over Fox Football. The season's coming up, so you'll have a chance to follow her. Follow Walt Wines at Walt Wines. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate everything that you've done. We hope you will be good and drink well. We'll see you soon. Cheers.